Good afternoon, everybody, and I welcome you to this IUCE webinar on outcome-based education. So in this presentation, I will be talking about my personal experience of implementing outcome-based education. So the simple agenda that I have for this presentation is this agenda, OBE, what is it and why should we be using that? So there are reasons why we should be using this outcome-based education that I will be talking in the beginning. Then I'll also talk about the scope of its application. That means at what level of an institution or what level of a course it can be implemented. Actually, OBE is a very institution level tool which needs to be employed at institution level itself. Then at third point, actually, I will be talking about OBE in action in a course. That means how I have implemented OBE principles in a cloud computing course that I have been teaching here. And finally, we are all people of tools. That means we need tools to implement certain things. And fortunately for us, there are many tools which are available which will help us to implement these OBE principles in an automated way. That I will be talking. Let me talk about my background before I start this webinar. See, I have introduced my first cloud computing way back in 2010. At that time, I was not actually aware about OBE and all, but again, our college was a part of a process called TechWhip and NBA accreditation. So we have been implementing these OBE principles then. So then I introduced another course which is actually part of OBE enabled. So the first question the audience would ask or anybody would ask is, what is this OBE is all about? See, OBE is a principle which will help us to focus our education. Outcome-based education means clearly focusing and organizing everything in an education system around what is essential for all students to be able to do successfully at the end of the learning experience. Today we have educational systems which have purposes. But purposes are good, but purposes are not enough. We need to say that in the beginning, what is that we are going to achieve at the end of this particular course. So that is what is called OBE or outcome. Okay. What is the meaning of outcome? Outcome is actually either a goal or purpose and end. Whereas purpose is something which is very not tangible. For example, the purpose of doing this will not talk about any particular destination. Whereas goal and end actually are very clear. For example, if you are playing football, you know goal is a place where actually you want to reach. So once you reach that, your score will go up and you will win the game. Similarly, end. Whenever you want to travel, you will have normally a destination. For example, the moment you get into a train or a bus, the first thing that the conductor will ask you where you want to get down. That's destination. So education OBE is all about deciding that goal or deciding that end for the educational process. Outcomes are the end products. For example, we want to see the end so that actually when we start, we will be very confident of getting that end. For example, if I am ill and go to a doctor, so at the end result, I want to be a cured patient when I am coming out of the hospital. So at the time, I would normally ask like how much duration the treatment will take, how much is going to cost. So people want certainty. People don't want surprises. Until now, actually, education was somehow reluctant to give this guarantee of saying that at the end of this course, this person will be able to do this. Now the time has come so that actually we can implement this. Or it may be an observable or internal changes in the learner. For example, if you have been teaching yoga to a student, then you will see that his health or his mental condition will improve at the end of the course. Let me give an example. See, suppose you join a course, a cooking course, then what actually happens is you may end up with a course in which actually you will end up with what you see on the left side. There is a receipt. That means how to prepare a fruit cake. So traditional education is like this. At the end of the course, you will get this receipt or probably a book. But if you are outcome-based education, then you will get the right side. So look at the right side. There's a fruit cake which is actually a student has prepared. And probably this example will you clearly explain that what is outcome-based education. So at the end of the course, you must be able to produce this cake. If you just know the receipt, then you are not actually using outcome-based education. You are actually using the traditional-based education. Second one, see, suppose I want to join, a driving school. It is possible that I learn little and try to get a license and end up with getting a license. But that is actually a output-based education, where actually at the end of this, but what actually you wanted from outcome-based education is the one actually you see on the right side of your screen. That means your ability to drive, your ability to negotiate in a crowded place and to take your car from wherever they are. So this is another example of outcome-based education. So if you are joining an outcome, if you are using outcome-based, then there is a tangible results which will come at the end of the course. It is not just a driving license you get. It is not just the receipt that you get. But there are many examples of outcome-based education that we can actually show you. Say, for example, suppose you are undergoing an apprentice training in a skilled trade, for example, NTTF, or like tool making and all. So at the end of the course, that student is capable of doing certain things which industry or economy would like to. Similarly, for example, karate instructions. So if you join a karate course, you don't end up with a book or you don't end up with a certificate. Although you end up with a black belt kind of a thing, but your skill is actually very evident at the end of the course. Anything that is evident at the course at the end of the is actually called outcome. For example, suppose you ask your kid to join a Bharatanatyam dance. At the end of the course, what you would like that kid to have is actually ability to make certain dances or play the dances. So this is the summary of any outcome based. So traditional education is all about knowledge and other things, whereas outcome based is all about the skills or the ability to do certain things at the end of the course. Then you may ask a question like, education has been there for quite some centuries, and why is that it has not been using outcome-based education proposals so far? The reason is very simple. See, the American education started around 18th century or 19th century or so, and even the European education, university education. See, when they started doing that, actually they wanted to copy the model from the industries. At that time, industry was working about actually standardization process. That means every activity should be sequenced, every should be assembled, and there should be standard. That means every product which is coming out of the factory should actually have the identical parameters and all. So when the education system started in many of the countries, they would try to copy this model. For example, every student will study the same subject, every student will be studying for the same duration, every student will be studying undergoing the same kind of a test and assessment and all. So what was actually important at that time actually is that when and how students will learn. That means when you will study alphabet, when you will study mathematical tables, and so on and so forth. But that was not sufficient. What is needed today is what is he learning and whether he has learned it at all. See, at the end of the course, we want to know like whether this engineering student has learned computer programming and is there any proof for that study. So at this point actually I want to tell you is OBE is a new model actually which will help you to build an outcome based process for your education. Now let me talk about how does it see in an educational institution. OBE is an organizing principle. That means today, since there is a demand from the industry that our students are not capable or are not eligible or most of the time not employable, now we need a new organizing principle. That is what is OBE is. It's a new organizing principle. It organizes the process of education around outcomes. So that means the central idea behind this was actually outcome. That what do I see in my student at the end of the course? It operates at institutional level. That means probably you know that in any organization, whether it's business or there are certain things like vision statement, mission statement, and then the strategies. The vision applies to the entire organization. Similarly, OBE applies to the entire organization. Mission, it depends on, it operates at the department level. For example, ISRO is there. They have different data centers. Like for example, the Bangalore ISRO center is all about launching. There is a Harikota which actually is practical launching. There is one more Ahmedabad where actually assemble the components. Similarly, each department will have a mission. Similarly, in OBE, the whole purpose will start at the institution level, and it is based on design down. That means institution level will decide certain outcome-based objectives, which is converted into program objective at the college department level, then course objective at the individual level. Look at this. See, for my college, which is actually NB accredited, we have a program objectives. So program objective is something like a vision statement of a company, which says that my institution will be developing this kind of a student, will be producing this kind of a particular students. So that's called program objective. So every institution has to have this because the whole process of OBE starts there. This is a continuation of that. Then once that is done, see, my college has about 7 department which will be offering degree level courses. So now it is converted into departmental level objectives which are called PEOs. That means program educational objectives. For example, my department will say to build technical components by providing necessary background and foundation in computer science. So this is a second level of creation of outcome based. So institution will start with PO and I will come with PEO. And all these have to be implemented through different courses. There are 8 semesters and each semester has a course. That level of objectives or outcomes are called course objectives. For example, I am teaching a course called cloud computing for which I have these COs. COs are course objectives. For example, able to understand the impact of cloud computing solution in global economic, environmental, societal context. What it means is actually now cloud computing has become a new paradigm of organizing your IT infrastructure. So student will be able to understand this in terms of a global, because there is a market, economic because it offers you a cost-effective method, environmental because it has an impact. I mean, because the data centers are used in cloud computing, the carbon imprint is very less, and so on and so forth. So these are the third level of objectives which are used in outcome-based. Let me summarize. So outcome-based education is actually an institutional level paradigm. So an institution will decide that we would like to specialize in this kind of education, and this is the kind of the students that we want to produce. So that is called POs, that means program objectives. Once that is done, then each department will be having its own objectives which are actually in tune with these POs. They are called PEOs, that is program educational objectives. And each department, each faculty will be offering a course, and those courses will also have some objectives called course objectives which fall in line with your PEOs. So, is there any question at this point of time?
No, sir, no questions yet.
Sridhar?
Nothing yet, sir.
I'll go ahead. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the summary is that OBE is a new paradigm. Let me look at the history. Why are we actually going for OBE? OBE is based on ISO 900 principles of continuous quality improvement and was introduced in response to industry request for better prepared students. So we all know this. In fact, I'm actually also faculty and I'm also a placement officer. Every time company comes for a placement or a recruitment process, they say, sir, about 70% of your students are not employable. And this they are saying for student who has about to complete his 4th year engineering. What do they mean by not employable? So what this says actually, sir, there is a lot of theory that is being taught in your colleges, but there is no exposure for the industrial requirement. They don't meet none of our requirement, means they are not production ready. So suppose your student has studied a programming language, he is not able to write a program code which is required by the industry. So this kind of a crisis was there in the United States also in the 90s. So in order to respond, that means in order to produce employable, ready to deploy direct to production system, the OBE was introduced. The movement began in the early 1990s, around 1997. It was based on the realization that all institutions and universities do not share the identical objectives. What it actually means is, a college in America may have a different objective, a college in Delhi will have different objectives. But until then, what was actually happening was, all engineering colleges throughout the world used to teach the same basics, same programming things, same algorithms and all. So that is not going to be helping. So that means each institution, like each temple or each locality, should have some distinct feature. This is possible only if you decide a special purpose for which actually you can build an institution, or the special context in which you are living. So the OBE was introduced to a historical requirement to convert your students from a normal graduates to employable and productive employees. Second one, to realize the goal that all institutions cannot have the same identical objective, because that time the education becomes a mass production kind of a thing, like a factory production, which is not good because industry needs different kind of skills. And thirdly, each institution can develop its own OBE and go further. Okay. And secondly, in the United States and even in India, see, there is to be a kind of a requirement from things like AICT and all. So they were very prescriptive. That means they used to say that you produce your engineers, you teach the courses which are basic and which will produce the people who are good in engineering skills which can be absorbed by the industry. So that's not going to happen, because prescriptions are good and prescriptions are intentions. Prescriptions are suggestions. They don't tell you how to do anything. Okay. Secondly, probably you have noticed, for example, in every engineering college in India today, first year is dedicated to basics. They study physics, they study chemistry, study engineering, electronics, soil mechanics and all. So 1/4, 25% of their career, I mean the time, course time is actually dedicated to learning some basics, which probably they have learned earlier or which has no consequence in their later. Okay, so this was actually leading to a situation in which all engineering students are exposed to basics, but never ever made special, I mean experts or specialists in any one particular tool or technology or skill. So that means much of the time was dedicated to basic skills, so which we wanted to avoid. Hence, we come out what is known as outcome-based education. Now, let me continue with OBE process. Before that, is there any questions?
Yeah, there is
Any
a question.
questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there is a question. I'll read it out for you.
Okay.
A couple of questions. I'll just read it out.
Okay.
I think there is a question from Murthy. It says initially POs need to be defined by the institution or the department. Question. The
Institution.
Yeah. And then another question.
POs are decided by the institution.
And another question is, can we add some POs? I think Shekhar asks, can we add some POs? I'm not sure at what level.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, it is possible. For example, see this OBE actually gives you both flexibility as well as rigidity. Rigidity would mean like, see, institution has some kind of a specialist, I mean, special purpose for its existence. As long as that is met, you can always add certain other dimensions which actually meet your specific requirements. As I can show in my experience in the later slides, that means when I decided a cloud computing course, actually it was in line with my OBE, but it also added an industrial dimension where I can contact industries and tell them that, say, I am preparing certain students who can be directly deployable in your cloud computing industry. So you have that flexibility to the extent that it doesn't actually violate the thing. In fact, there is one clause in that which says that every faculty can change 10% of his syllabus every semester. That means if I introduce cloud computing in 2010 and I can change about 10% of that syllabus the following year. So that flexibility is there.
Okay, I'll ask this next question. I will answer it and you can also answer it. This is from Goel. Students are coming in with different backgrounds. Okay. Is it difficult to apply the OBE? It is difficult to apply the OBE process unless you cover the basics, how to handle the situation. So Dr. Goel, the question, the point here is that you should not, you must cover the basics. Though the basics are very, very important, but you have to find a way to use those for design principles and the higher level creativity, application, and so on. And that balance is what is critical. So you don't want to get rid of the basic, because without basic they can't design anything. Okay, so keep that in mind, the balance. And another question from Goel is, we are affiliated to OP Technical University, we can't change the syllabus and examination pattern. So that is something I'll hand it over to you to address, Ravindra.
Sir, actually, okay. So regarding basics, I can tell you, sir, see, it is true that basics are important, fundamentals are very required. But if you look at any first year engineering course anywhere in any engineering college in India, we have subjects like physics, chemistry and all, sir. Much of that they have learned actually in their PUC level, be it a titration or it's a quantum mechanics and some kind of a thing. So those kind of a things can be minimized and actually you can focus on more of engineering basics. Okay. So while we will not reject the idea that no basics should not be covered, but there are some redundancies which are built. For example, many of the things they study at +12, actually they are getting repeated in the engineering. So that's one you can avoid, so that you can create a space of about 2 subjects or 4 subjects, in another 3 subjects, which can be included to teach the fundamentals of engineering. And as regard to your question of like you are affiliated to university, okay, so you are in a development process, sir. Eventually, probably you will come out with some kind of a process where actually you get liberated from this and become an autonomous. At that time, this would be useful for you at an institution level. But however, even within the autonomous, I mean, when the part of the affiliation, there is possible that you can add certain courses which are industry relevant and offer if students are interested.
Okay. Another question from Shekhar. When you are writing POs, what parameters we have to consider? What parameters should we consider?
Okay, sir. PO would always mean, like, for example, an engineering college which is there in Bangalore will actually can focus, I mean, if it's a computer science department, to meet the requirement of that institute, I mean, that environment. For example, Bangalore is known for software industry, then actually you can develop courses which meet the specific requirements of an industry. For example, say Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore offers one post-graduation diploma for software engineering managers. So this is a very specific course which is designed for the particular thing. But suppose you are in a place like Pune, where mechanical industry is very intense, then probably your mechanical department can offer certain courses which includes POs which meet the specific need of that. So the very idea of PO is to meet the local requirement while keeping in line with the POs, because POs are actually at industry level. That means your engineering graduate must be able to move out of India also. So at that level it is done, but these courses at your department level, you can always look into your environment and do. For example, Harvard University is known for certain things, MIT is known for something else. So where do they differ? They differ at the PO level.
Another question from Harish Dalal. I think he has a good point. He says, whoever decides the objectives, the ultimate objective to create employment students in the short term and in the long term for a lifetime, a learning-oriented person. I think I agree with that. So your comment, Ravindra? The short term and long term. Short term, create employable students in the short term, and in their lifetime, they should be learning-oriented persons. This should help. OBE should be addressing that, right?
True, sir. That is true, sir. Actually, see, when we are talking about employable, we mean both, sir. Actually, employable means it's a short-term objective because we will make him to get to a first level of job in a company. But what needs to be learned in the industry is actually the responsibility of the industry where he joins. So lifelong learning is a skill which a student is inculcated so that he will be keeping in pace with whatever the development that is happening in the industry. But when he comes out of my institution, he should be in at least that position of learning where actually company says can come and start working with us. So thereafter, changes in the technology and all those things will actually induce lifelong learning. But that can remain an intention in our college, but the practice would happen only in industry and with that individual.
Okay, then Sen Gupta says, do the OBE only comprise of skills or do they also comprise of knowledge? And my answer to that would be, it would be a balance of the two. The skills are an application of knowledge, so it should be applying, creating, designing things using knowledge. So that is the basis. But go ahead, you respond to that.
Sir, actually, sir, OBE, since I am an engineering faculty and presenting for an engineering audience, doesn't mean that OBE is applicable only for engineering and skills. See, OBE has been used extensively in every domain, humanities, psychology, history, geography, everywhere it is used. Okay, there are courses where knowledge is very intense and which is most. For example, if you are teaching history and all, there are skills are limited, but knowledge is high. So, okay, there also it has been extensively used. But since I am talking about an engineering course where skill is more important than knowledge, hence we are talking more emphasis on skills. But OBE in principle includes everything outcome which is intended of that particular course. Suppose you are joining a cooking course, then your skill is more important. Suppose you are joining a karate course, then that is important. But suppose you are doing a history course, then your knowledge is most important than your skills.
Okay, the next one is colleges. Sharma says colleges are under some universities, so it is not possible to change the syllabus and exam pattern. In this case, how can we apply OBE?
So that's what I'm telling. See, this is a developmental process, sir. See, there are many universities which actually have affiliated colleges which are actually planning for some kind of autonomous and all. And our college also was part of an affiliated university 7 years back. But this presentation will open your eyes towards a possibility. For example, maybe at the end of this, you feel that there are occasions, there are ways of actually improving education. One way is to get an autonomous status. Probably management will think on that. So this is a kind of a solution which is available, and depending on the state of your development, it can be adapted. For example, it is possible that if you are expert in a particular course, then you can introduce that course within your college using these principles and make your student additionally qualified for it. And when you actually, when you get an institution level autonomy, then you can use that expertise to implement later. Or it is also possible that you can develop a professional course for a professional gatherings. For example, if you are a mechanical engineer, you can develop a CAE on this kind of a outcome based, which decides the outcome for a particular industry, and then you offer that course as a professional course. Then that knowledge what you gain may be used when you get a autonomy sometime later.
Okay, Vijay Kumar has a couple of comments and questions. Is there a necessity that all the graduate attributes must be reflected in the POs?
Well, this is actually, this is a conceptual question, sir. I will tell you. It is desirable that everybody should have all the graded attributes. But again, at the bottom of that, we are creatures of nature. I mean, nature, sir. So if you do not have that skill by your birth, then there is a limited that thing would actually happen. I'll tell you an example. See, we have this National Cricket Academy in Bangalore, and every player who joins there want to be an all-rounder. But eventually, somebody will advise you that don't do that. Actually, you either become a bowler or a wicket keeper or a batsman. So when he comes out of this National Cricketing Academy, he is not an all-rounder. We hope everybody to be an all-rounder, but in practice that doesn't happen. And you know these stories where actually Sachin Tendulkar actually wanted to be a bowler and somebody told him to become a batsman. So he never tried to be a bowler thereafter. So something similar will also happen in engineering. Ideally, we want a student to possess all attributes, but in practice that may not be happening because that's a limitation that is imposed by the individual himself, not by the system.
Another comment by Vijay Kumar. We had problem mapping contemporary issues and had written 11 POs only. Is that okay to have only 11 POs? Mapping, they're not
Fine,
having
the number doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, sir, see, it's a question of, this OBE is a process of both qualitative and quantitative approach, sir. So, number is not the yardstick, okay, yardstick. But again, if you have just four objectives and you comprehensively cover all your requirements, then that's also good. And even if you have 12 and if you miss certain things, that's bad. So, number and absolute terms is not very important as long as whatever issues it covers by the given number of objectives that you have.
Is it required that PEOs are per Bloom's taxonomy?
Yes, sir. No, it's not required, but there are occasions where actually Bloom's taxonomy will help you. For example, if you have a PO which says like design a cloud computing system, then you know that this is actually a very comprehensive level. That's the top level of Bloom's taxonomy. Similarly, if you say like a list the characteristics of cloud computing, then you know that this is the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy where actually a student is recalling it. Okay. Suppose I ask you question like compare between private and public cloud, then you know this is the third level of Bloom's taxonomy which you are using. So Bloom's taxonomy is a tool which will ensure that your objectives are met at appropriate level, at either the top level of comprehension or third level of analysis or bottom level of recalling or remembering.
Okay, that was by Ankush Sharma. The last question before you move on, Sen Gupta says should we do OBE first and then design curriculum or vice versa?
No, sir, it should be a top-down approach because see whether a particular course is there in this is actually decided by your departmental objectives. That in turn is decided by the institutional objective. Okay, so it has to start from the top. See, it's like say designing a house. It starts with architecture. It's not like say you build 2 rooms and then go for architecture. It's not correct way. Though architecture can accommodate this existing 2 rooms, but it has to start at top level.
Okay, so now we will move on, but before we move on, I just want to compliment the audience for being so extremely active and asking all these questions. So I want to thank the audience for doing that. And I think what is important for everybody who is listening to this this webinar is to realize that that there is a significant level of flexibility in outcomes-based education at the institutional level, individual level also. So you have to be creative. You should not think that there will be a formula that will be provided and you just have to fit into a formula. There is a lot of flexibility at the institutional level within broad guidelines provided by OBE and NBA in this case, and in the United States is ABET. So it is a combination of both, a little some channeling and as well as some flexibility. So I'm glad to see all these questions, and in fact I just want to let you know that in the next several months we will be focusing more and more on IUC, will be focusing more and more on helping faculty and institutions understand more about OBE, particularly from people who are trying to do this within India, because what each of you will relate to is more with to people like Ravindra, who is trying to do it in at one college in India. So because the difficulties examples that he will find is similar to what you will find, and that is why we're bringing in front of you a series of people who will be talking about their experiences. So they're also learning. So keep in mind, Ravindra also has just started this in 2010. So it takes time. Everybody is learning. So we will learn together. That is the objective of our IUC webinars. Okay. So now Ravindra, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. See, before that, actually, OBE is a framework. So that means framework will always give a guidelines. It's also very flexible. That means at points where you actually need, it will give you freedom also. So it's also free to operate kind of a thing. That means here in this area, if I think, then you always have the ability to override an existing thing and proceed. So OBE as a process. See, today engineering always says that what is most important is process, because an individual can always do, but if a process is implemented, then irrespective of the who person is, actually process will ensure that those activities will happen. So outcome-based education, if implemented properly, is an enabler of change. That means it will allow you to change from a traditional affiliated system to an independent autonomous organization, or kind of a copying kind of from a mass education system to a specialist education provider. The objective of the outcome formulated after the consultation with on the stakeholders. Look at this. Faculty is important, alumni is important, students are important, and employees are important. So today, until today, before this OBE came, so this course was decided by some faculty and at the university level, and it's implemented across all the affiliate colleges. So alumni was never consulted because university had too many thousands of alumni. Employers were not consulted because that the university did not think it was required. Today that is changing. So faculty is consulted because they want to know what is happening in the industry and what expertise they have. Students are because they are the stakeholders who will join in the industry. And alumni is very important because they are your previous products, and since they are working in the industry, they will give you the exact expression of what happened to whatever they have learned in this. For example, you meet a student who says like, see, whatever the data structure that you thought was very useful, sir, but the environmental science that you thought was actually never ever used, sir. So there are 4 pillars to this: faculty, alumni, students, and employers. And this gives you a sense of reality. That means this course is designed with this people's consultation. So the moment you do this, it becomes very relevant, unlike the traditional course. Programs are evaluated against attainment. It is not only that, for example, when you ask an alumni who is employed in 3 years in an industry, when he comes back and talk to your student, he will tell you, these are the courses which actually we found it useful. Because any student currently studying thinks every course is equally important and he will ignore each one of them equally. But now what we say is, after 3 years, one student comes back to you and says that these are the courses which are relevant, sir. This you should not have done, sir. And this is, so there is a kind of a loop created between what the current students and the alumni, and they will tell you that what happened in 2012 actually was useful in 2015. So this is what the beauty and the speciality of outcomes. That means you know what are you doing, you also know how industry is using that, you know whom are you teaching, and you also know what the feeling of these students who taught you once and currently using it in the industry. That's the beauty. And secondly, it also gives you a kind of a variety of universities, because today what happens is all the 110 colleges in Karnataka, engineering college affiliated to university, will produce this, about 20 or 30,000 of engineers in a particular discipline with identical skills, or at least identical courses completed. See, no industry will want us very standardized people. A company like Infosys wants some other, some kind of a programming skills. A startup will want another kind of thing. So this OBE will help you to do that. For example, if you are in an ecosystem of startups like in Pune or Bangalore, then you can have 1 or 2 or 3 courses which will actually meet that particular, because your OBE will enable that. And secondly also, what happens is, for example, there are agencies like AICTE and all, they give a kind of a funding for you. See, if every college is applying for the same kind of a funding, it becomes very difficult for them to actually allocate. Everybody goes for image processing, everybody goes for cloud computing. But because of your OBE, if you think that you want to be...
I have a suggestion. You should move to cloud computing, otherwise you'll run out of time. You should move to your course. The overall thing is fine. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So OBE implementation, I will start with my example. So this is the principle and this is the practice. See, OBE system should be based on the outcomes and gives the top priority to the ends and purposes and learning accomplishment. See, on the right side you see, sir, actually I wanted to produce a cloud competent professional to be absorbed by the industry. So left side, the outcome is actually to be mentioned. On the right side I have mentioned it. So my intention in designing this course was to produce cloud competent professionals to be absorbed by the industry. Okay. And outcome-based education means that clearly focusing. So I was focusing on these following things. At the end of this course, cloud computing course, each student be able to design, develop, a cloud computing system. So now you look at this, design and develop actually are the third and fourth of your Bloom's taxonomy. Using cloud computing resources, that means he has to develop these products using only cloud resources. This actually is the bottom level of your Bloom's taxonomy, where actually you are aware and able to recall the resources which are available and deploy it on a cloud computing platform. This is actually industrial skill. See, if you are using a startup company or if you are starting one, then your ability to develop and deploy is very important. So that is what is actually done in my particular course. And the principle was developing a clear set of learning outcomes. So what is I expect my student to at the end of this design, develop and deploy a cloud computing system, and in the process learning associated languages such as Python, Java, Google App Engine and API. And if you click on this example, when I give you my slide, you can see that here is an example of a student who developed a small project which illustrates that he has learned this particular skill. And establishing the condition and opportunities within the system. That means now having an ambition or having a dream is one thing, but actually enabling people to do that is a second thing. So what I did was, cloud computing is based on the open source resources. That means college don't have to buy anything, all that they have to have internet connectivity. Labs are identified and earmarked for conducting the cloud computing classes and allow students to explore. So what I did was actually look at this particular picture. This is a class where actually I was teaching my cloud computing class. So cloud computing has a quality called multi-tenancy, in which a particular software running on a server can actually meet the requirement of couple of students, couple of users. Now this is used both. For example, you have to create a condition where you convince your student that cloud computing is good enough. Now you see that unlike in a traditional class, I am seeing one particular slide of my presentation, my students are seeing different. So while this is an advantage for them, this is also an illustration to them saying that multi-tenancy quality of cloud computing helps you this feature. That means you can go at your own speed and you are not making a physical copy of my software or my hardware or my presentation, you are doing that. So I created a situation where actually I could convince my students through an illustration. I did not say there is an idea called multi-tenancy, the cloud computing will work. Actually, I told you this. Secondly, cloud computing has one quality called elasticity. That means you can start with 10 users, you can go to 100 users, you can go to 30 users. So this here is an example which I conducted a cloud computing workshop in Coimbatore, where actually about 400 students attended my webinar, my presentation, where actually each one was actually accessing my presentation through the cloud. So this is an example of scalability. That means you don't have to worry about additional resources which are needed. Cloud computing by automatic provision, it will give you. And once this is done, once I illustrated, students started developing projects. For example, a weather report project. This project was using Google API and weather application from the Yahoo. So this, you can always click on this and see that one. Similarly, there was another project which was done using Google API. So anything that I did in that class was practical oriented. That means at the end of this, student should produce something which is based on the knowledge that he has gained or shared. So this was another cloud computing project which they used what is known as App Engine. App Engine is a platform as a service, a tool given by cloud computing that they used. And the student will deploy a cloud computing system, and we can see, look at this, the outcomes is a tangible application. At the end of this, it is not that he has memorized something at the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy or he is able to identify. He must be able to do something based on that. Okay. So cloud computing, any course would have actually content. In my course, the content was cloud computing. Information, I used to tell them the Google is also based on cloud computing. Facebook is also based on cloud computing. Many startups are based on the cloud computing. That was to inspire. Idea, cloud application is different and distinct from existing traditional application in which you develop an application for Windows, you develop an application for Linux, and so on and so forth. That is not going to happen. You are developing an universal application which works for every device and all. And tools like Google App Engine and all. And having learned students do things beyond knowing itself. Knowing is not engineering, doing is engineering. So my students did cloud projects, academic projects, OBE projects and small projects. Secondly, there is one requirement of this outcome based. See, that means at the end of the course, student must be, the knowledge that he has should be used to do certain things. For example, you should be able to describe, explain, design and produce. For this, I used to have what is known as a signature question. You know, in many of the films, actually there is a signature tone which is playing in the background in every scene. Okay. Similarly, look at one of the fundamental questions that I used to ask in the beginning of the semester is like, SDMCT has decided to build an IT infrastructure ground up, starting, make a recommendation in terms of which of the three services like IaaS, PaaS and SaaS that STMs can use. Sir, should I stop?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Keep going. You run out of time. But when there are.
So this is called a signature question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Sir.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So this is called a signature question. What it means is every time one lesson is over, the answer given by the student for this question is changes. That means in the beginning, you know, there are three models. Once I complete IaaS, then you will refine his answer. So this kind of a question should be asked in the, this is called signature questions. And finally, deploy a system which can work. So what is the ultimate result? Ultimate result was this. My students were able to design and develop cloud-based system that I will show you. There is a list of that. And able to analyze the situation and recommend a suitable. For example, the running example for my course was SDMCT. But tomorrow, our society has an engineering college. So I can ask my students, go to that engineering, medical college and check out how do you develop a cloud-based implementation system for them. So that was a running question they would be able to answer. So at the end of the course, what is the outcome? Since 2010, students have completed more than 200 cloud-based projects. Why is that? Had I taught cloud computing in a traditional where actually I have 5 chapters or 8 chapters and ask questions from 5 chapters, they would have learned it, by-hearted it and forgotten it immediately after examination. But since I implemented the idea called OBE, they were able to do 200 cloud computing projects. And this is available for your access. If you look at the list number 1 and list number 2, you will see all the 200 projects that I have. In addition to that, actually, it also helped me to conduct 200 cloud computing workshops in South India. And for every cloud computing project, I used to take 2 of my students to there so that I can impress the students in those colleges to say that this is doable. And one of the students got so impressed that actually he developed a placement website for that college. So that means I was able to inculcate a student, encourage a student who is away from me. And thirdly, one of my students actually who studied in 2000 under me, now he's starting a new company based on cloud computing system. So any question? Because next I have to go to show you the implementation.
Yeah, let me just see what latest questions are. Yeah, we'll take a couple of questions very quickly, and I will read them out.
Okay.
And I will take 2-3 minutes on that, and then we'll move on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, if each OBE, Sen Gupta says, if each OBE stipulated does not have a specific measurable goal, how do we measure it at the end of the course?
See, for example, that's what I told you, sir. See, in cloud computing courses, there are knowledge part and there's a skill part. The knowledge part would ask, like, see, how do you decide which of the service model to be used in college SDMCT? So that would test the knowledge. And every time you have a knowledge and a standard answer to that. For example, what are the private cloud applications that you are testing from knowledge perspective. From the skill perspective, I told you, develop an application to do this particular job. For example, develop a cloud-based application to develop a calculator. There you are actually knowing the skill of that student. So the theoretical questions, theoretical knowledge is checked. The first is the bottom 3 areas of Bloom's taxonomy will test the test. Test the knowledge. For example, suggest or recommend a model of cloud computing for my college. So the answer will decide that. And develop an application and check the test.
Let me answer Sen Gupta's question. I think his premise is wrong. He thinks OBE does not specify measurable goals. OBE does specify measurable goals. There are outcomes that you have to measure through assessment, proper metrics and assessment. So I think there is a little bit of misunderstanding. Sen Gupta, I think we can clarify that later on offline. Okay, so I think that there are measurable goals. Each outcome has a measurable goal that you have to first. And Harish Dalal says, is it possible to contact Ravindra by phone later on? He has 50 years of research experience in the US and like to share the experiences. So that is good. Harish, we will definitely make sure that you and Ravindra are connected. Then there is then Ankush Sharma says if subject purely theoretical, how can we apply OBE for that? So that is a good question. Go ahead, Ravindra. How do you respond to that?
Okay. See, sir, theoretical questions are good. But see, one of the fundamental rule in engineering education is that 100% purely theoretical subjects, if possible, should be avoided. But if it is required, then your faculty has to ensure that there are certain things which are to be included which are practical. Otherwise, what happens is knowledge is useful, but not going to contribute. For example, if you are a college which teach aviation and if you have a very theoretical subject, then that is good for knowledge purpose but not skill purpose. And the only purpose of engineering education is a skill that is to be used in the industry. Okay, now I'll go back, go to the next stage actually called implementing OBE and a cloud platform.
Let me quickly address Ankush Sharma's question. It's because theoretical courses are very important. Theoretical courses are very important, and so let me address his question. I think at the department, there will always be in one program, there will be several theory courses which are very important, and those faculty should connect with the other courses and make sure the students are able to bridge between the theory courses and the practical courses and use some examples in the theory courses as well from the practical courses. That way, the students will start understanding why they are doing the theory. Okay, so that is important. So different courses will have different amounts of theory, and that is important to keep that different balance. Okay, so go ahead, Ravindra. You have 10 minutes to finish up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing my import screen, sir?
Yeah, we are seeing. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So this part of the presentation will show you that now.
No, we are seeing we are not seeing.
We have told you a model which is existing. It is also our responsibility to tell you that there are tools and systems which will.
Yeah, go ahead. Now we can see it. Yeah.
What are you seeing, sir?
We are seeing in parts.
Okay.
Fine.
So now that I have told you, okay, sir. Okay. So now that I have told you that there is a framework to implement, being engineers, it's our responsibility also to give you tools and technologies or even a system to implement that. And thankfully for us, there is an enterprise called InPods, which is dedicated for developing a system which will help institutions and faculty to implement the OBE. Look at this. I am running a course called Cloud Engineering, and there is a link called OBE. So this OBE tab will help you to set up your objectives, outcome-based education and other things, maybe network problem, but this is what it is.
Having a bandwidth problem. Okay, go ahead. Yes, yeah, you're having bandwidth problem, network problem, but go ahead, yeah.
It is taking little time, but I think it should work.
Yeah, just keep talking while it's coming up. Yeah.
And second important thing about, yes sir. And second thing is also you should remember, sir. Actually, there is a saying in physics which says that if you are talking about something which you can't, this is an issue all the time. Okay. So, but before that, I will make some remarks. See, in science, there is a statement which says that if you are talking about something, it makes sense only if you can measure it. Okay. So for a long time, education was not able to measure what it has been delivering. It used to say like, I will conduct there was not kind of a directly related, metrics which are going to help you in conducting a course or that kind of a thing. Okay. But today, engineering has come with certain tools which will help you to. So now it will show you everything, like see your vision, mission, PEOs and all. See, for example, my CEOs are listed here. And you can also see on the left side, the Bloom's taxonomy can be used there. 1 minute. So on the left side, you see actually vision, mission statement, graduate attributes, POs and all. Mine is actually computer science. So I'm doing it for OBE demo. What is this? Mechanical engineering. And mine is computer science. Where is that? Okay. So anyway, so this will show you all the OBEs and description. Yes, sir?
Go ahead. Yeah.
The reason why I'm showing is that this gives you an automated process for doing many things. Yes, sir, automated process. And you know, one of the beautiful thing about IT is actually it also not only allows you to do a job, it will also allows you to do certain things which are important. Say for example, whenever I conduct a test, I get a report. So look at this. I conducted my CAT 1 and I can get my reports here. See, the moment I conduct a test, it will give you certain things. For example, this process is automated. That means you don't have to undergo the manual process of evaluating and all. So this will give you a lot of advantage for you. So, and finally, it also, say for example, at the bottom of the page, you can actually see that who has answered which question and who has answered which, who has answered it correctly. So this import system is a very efficient and automated system which will help you to conduct and run a course on a platform which will help you to design, define, describe your objectives, connect them to things like Bloom's taxonomy, and I told you on the left side, all those things. And student wise, you can actually do that. And also, for example, you can give assignment lessons. And secondly, education also tells you that students will learn in different formats. Some people by listening, some people by doing and all those things. Now it will allow you to run courses. For example, look at this. My introduction to cloud computing course will have 3 different resources available for a student. So he can study by reading a lesson, or he can go to video lesson, or he can go to PPTs. Now a kind of a multimedia or a different kind of a educational system can also be delivered. Suppose you are teaching on a classroom without kind of OBE, and then either there is a PPT or there is a notes or there is a whole class. But now because of the platform which is available, now it is possible that you can actually give all kind of a liberty to student. If somebody wants to study PPT, whether he has attended the class or not, you can give them. If somebody is ready, very good at learning from listening to you, then the video can be provided. And if we want to give a kind of a printed notes, that's also possible. The whole summary of this cloud-based system is it will allow you to document your requirement and then upload your resources and conduct activities which are measured automatically, which will give you insights for your current end process. For example, I can ask question at the end of the course saying that how many of my questions were actually related to Bloom's taxonomy level number 6. Similarly, how many of my outcomes are actually met by 30% of the students. Okay, so this is what the point is. If you have any questions, you can ask at this point of time. Because
so while we can wind it up. I think you have given some good idea how your tool will work and how the reports can be done.
Okay.
So let us see if there are any other questions.
Okay. So my last remark is that
Yeah, go ahead.
My last remark is actually this. See, my implementation of outcome based is actually a tip of an iceberg. I might not have told you all the features of that. Maybe I have not implemented them in full spirit or correctly. But the point you should see is actually you should see my presentation as an example of a grand idea called OBE, which can be implemented. And if implemented, it will help every stakeholder, whether it's a teacher or a student or an alumni who is working in an industry or also an employer. So try to exploit this idea because this is one of the very strong ideas. And fortunately for each one of us, there are systems like Imports which will help you to implement them on a large scale, which can be accessed from any student anywhere and all. So this is the thing. And this is my contact information. You can contact through my email. And yes, that's also. Anything else, sir?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, excellent. Very good job, Ravindra. I'm going to see if there are any other comments or questions. But before I do that, let me again emphasize that what we are doing, what IUC is trying to do through these OBE webinars is that it is not that the presenters will be 100% experts or from the top, but they will be practitioners like each one of you at different colleges, and they're sharing their experiences. So this is a forum where we are becoming a community which is practicing different aspects of OBE. We're sharing from each other. We're all in the learning stage, like in your classroom, the students are learning from each other, and the teacher is kind of guiding. You kind of will be working together, and that is why so don't expect 100% satisfactory answers to every question that you have today, because even I cannot give you those answers, and nobody can really give you 100% answer. You have to discover them yourself by trying out OBE in your own setting, and within certain guidelines and mentoring and sharing experiences from others like Ravindra. So in the next few months, we'll be speaking more and more people like Ravindra who are trying out OBE and having some successes, and also having some questions, having some confusion. All together we are working together to resolve each other's issues. There are a couple of if any other comments for another 2-3 minutes we will take. In the meantime, I'm going to read out whatever has come. It's from Ankush Sharma. It says, is it required for any course content to be up to 2nd or 3rd level of Bloom's taxonomy? Ankush, I'm going to answer that question. Throughout the 4 years of the curriculum, the students will have some courses, and some will address more the lower level outcomes, particularly in the 1st, 2nd year. Some courses at the higher level will address the higher level outcomes in Bloom's taxonomy. So it has to be a mixture of different levels of taxonomy. You cannot have all the courses, every outcome address the higher level of taxonomy, because without understanding something, people cannot design or create. So you have to understand some subject matter, have some knowledge, and then apply, create, and design, and so on. Those are the synthesized. All those come at higher level. So there'll be a distribution of different levels of taxonomy throughout different courses throughout the 4 years. So if you are teaching a course that is at a more basic level, you probably will mostly have first lower level Bloom's taxonomy involved, mostly understanding. But if you're teaching course at the 4th, the final year level, then you probably will have many more of your course objectives will be related to the high levels of taxonomy. So keep that in mind. And Ankush has another comment: a mathematical numerical in which all data have been given out to get solution. In which category of Bloom's taxonomy? I think we may not have time to get into that level of detail, Ankush, but we can either you can send us an email, or we will be having courses more detail on Bloom's taxonomy and other things in the next few months. So that is good. Then Murthy says, good insight to OBE and inputs. Thanks for expecting more on the. Thank you, expecting more on OBE. And Arvind Bande says, session was very informative. That is good. So I think we have reached the end of 1 hour, and I think we run out of questions and comments. And so, do you have any final comments you want to make, Ravindra, based on what you've just heard?
Yes, sir. Actually, no, sir. That's what I want to tell you, sir. Actually, there was one English critic called Richards. He used to tell that, say, criticism is all about finding the good quality of a novel, but any critic will not see everything. So you need multiple critics to understand a novel. And he used to call that, it's called a common pursuit. That means the critic community has a common pursuit in search of a truth or something like that. Similarly, we also have a common pursuit as a faculty, engineering students and all. So that means one presenter like me may not be able to see all the corners of an issue. But again, having said that, whatever I have seen, I have shared with you, and also expect others to participate and share their one. So this is a common pursuit that everybody will be chasing, and one day probably we will find by sharing, exchanging and all things. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ravindra. And again, as Ravindra said, I encourage each one of you who is experimenting with these OBE concepts in your own course, to come up and make a brief presentation what you are doing, so we can share. You don't have to be an expert. You can be a learner about OBE, and together we can learn. So so don't hesitate to even give a short webinar, 10-15-minute webinar on what you're trying to do in your own experience, because that way, when you make a presentation, you learn a lot about what you're trying to do, because then you have to reflect on it and think about how you want to make the presentation. So clarity emerges when you're trying to put things down in terms of a paper or a presentation. So I encourage all of you to be thinking in that direction to actually make these kinds of webinar presentations, and we'll be happy to schedule them for you.